You know, there's something rather curious about this whole business of getting enlightened. Everyone treats it like a vacation destination. You book your flight to Nirvana, pack your spiritual suitcase, and off you go. And you think that once you arrive, there'll be fireworks, angels singing, and perhaps a neatly printed certificate declaring, "Congratulations, you've made it." But the universe, being the trickster that it is, has a far subtler sense of humor. Because when you get there, really there, there's no one left to receive the certificate. You see, the entire idea of arrival is a delicious cosmic prank. Who exactly was going to arrive? Who was going to stand at the gates of heaven and announce, "I did it"? The moment you think you've reached something final, that thought itself becomes the next illusion to transcend. Enlightenment is not a point at the end of a line. It's the erasure of the line altogether. Most of us, you see, have been thoroughly hypnotized by the idea of progress, of getting somewhere. We start in ignorance, we work hard, we purify, we meditate, we climb up the great ladder of self-improvement, and at the top, we expect to find ourselves, but shinier. But life isn't a corporate ladder. It's more like music. You don't listen to a symphony in order to reach the final note. The point of dancing isn't to arrive at one particular spot on the floor. The joy is in the movement itself. And yet, spiritual seekers, earnest, sincere, often exhausted, they come to me with the same question: how do I get enlightened? And I can't help but laugh, not unkindly, but like someone who sees the punchline before the setup is finished. Because it's as if the eye were trying to see itself, or the tongue were trying to taste itself. You can't get what you already are. We chase awakening as though it were an object, something to possess, something to hold, something to achieve. But the act of chasing is precisely what hides it. Like trying to still a pond by beating the water flat with your hands, the harder you try, the more ripples you make. This is the first great joke of awakening. The seeker and the sought are the same. The one who is running so desperately toward the truth is already it. You are the very thing you are looking for, but because you're looking for it, you can't see it. Like a fish searching for the ocean, or a man searching for his own head. Now, I don't say this to mock the search. The search itself is part of the game. The divine hides from itself so that it can enjoy the drama of being found. You think you're on a journey, but the journey is the universe's way of admiring its own reflection. And when, after years of seeking, you finally stumble into that stillness, there's a moment of incredulous laughter, because you realize there was never any need to move at all. You were home before you began. That's the punchline of the cosmic joke. You reach the summit of the mountain, panting, triumphant, and you find an old monk there making tea, smiling quietly, as if to say, "What took you so long?" And you realize he never climbed anything. He just stayed put and noticed that the mountain was already within him. So awakening isn't a grand arrival. It's the collapse of the idea that there was anywhere else to go. It's the stillness underneath all the movement, the silence behind the music, the space in which the whole play unfolds. And once you see that, you understand that the whole drama, the striving, the failing, the doubting, the meditating, was the divine pretending to forget itself just so it could enjoy remembering. The joke, then, is not cruel. It's divine laughter. Because what else could eternity do if not play at being lost and found? Now, after the laughter fades, something very strange happens. And this, I warn you, is the part no one tells you about. It's what I call the death of the seeker. Because, you see, the moment you awaken, truly awaken, the one who was seeking, the one who was struggling and striving and trying to get somewhere, quietly disappears, vanishes, poof, gone without ceremony. And it's rather unnerving because for as long as you can remember, that seeker was you. You've spent your whole life polishing, improving, becoming, aiming. You've been the protagonist in a long, noble story of spiritual progress, the hero trudging through ignorance toward illumination. And suddenly, snap! There is no hero. There never was. The story simply dissolves in your hands, like smoke. It's not that you die physically, of course. You still breathe, still walk, still butter your toast in the morning. But the you who thought it was running the show is revealed to be a fiction, a marvelous, persistent illusion. And without it, life continues effortlessly, spontaneously, beautifully, but no longer yours in the old sense. It's a little like standing on a stage where the play has ended, the lights have gone up, and the audience has left, and you suddenly realize there's no actor, no stage, no script at all. Only awareness itself, radiant and vast, pretending all along to be someone playing a part. And here's the curious bit. This death feels, at first, like loss, a terrible emptiness. The seeker mourns its own disappearance, which, of course, is absurd. Like a shadow, lamenting the loss of the light that created it. There's this sense of falling forever, with nothing to cling to, because all the things you used to hold on to, your ambitions, your fears, your prayers, were all part of that same dream. But listen closely. This falling is not into darkness. It's falling into infinity, into boundless space that was always there, unnoticed behind the clutter of self-concern. It feels like dying. Yes, but only because you mistake awakening for an event that happens to someone. In truth, it happens to no one. That's the great irony. The seeker spends years, perhaps lifetimes, chasing enlightenment, only to find that enlightenment required the seeker's disappearance. It's the ultimate surrender not of possessions, not of desires, but of the one who possesses and desires. And yet, don't mistake this for nihilism. The death of the seeker isn't the end of life, it's the beginning of freedom. When you no longer imagine yourself to be a separate observer, you find that everything is happening perfectly on its own. The trees grow, the rivers flow, the birds sing, and even your own thoughts arise without your permission. Existence simply dances, unburdened by a conductor. People sometimes ask me, but if the seeker dies, who lives? And I say, life lives. You don't breathe. Breathing happens. You don't think. Thoughts appear. You don't love. Love flows through you like wind through an open window. You are not the doer of life, you are life itself, momentarily playing the part of a doer for the sheer delight of it. So yes, the seeker dies. But what's revealed beneath its funeral shroud is something unspeakably vast, the infinite, pretending to be small, and then laughing when it remembers what it really is. This is why I sometimes say enlightenment is like the ocean losing the idea that it's a wave. The wave dies, but only in concept. The water remains. In fact, the water is freer than ever, because it no longer has to keep its shape. And from that moment on, life becomes astonishingly simple. There is nothing to achieve, nothing to protect, nothing to prove. You live as naturally as rain falls or leaves turn in autumn. The great burden of me has lifted, and in its place, there's only a deep, effortless ease. That, my friends, is the death of the seeker and the birth of everything. After the seeker has died, after the masks have fallen, after the glorious collapse of the me, something beautifully ordinary begins to happen. You wake up the next morning, the kettle whistles, you brush your teeth, you look out the window, and the same old world greets you, the same sky, the same birds, the same laundry hanging on the line. And you think, well, surely something should be different now. Where are the halos, the auras, the celestial orchestras I was promised? But instead, the universe hands you a toothbrush and says, welcome home. This is what I call the banality of the infinite. The shock of discovering that the eternal, that which sages and poets and mystics have worshipped for millennia, has been quietly hiding in the smallest, dullest corners of your everyday life. It turns out that God was never waiting at the end of the road. God was the road. The divine wasn't hiding in the monastery or the mountaintop, it was in the teacup, the traffic light, the sound of your own footsteps on the floor. You see, the mind always imagined awakening as a kind of supernatural upgrade, a state of perpetual bliss, of shimmering transcendence. But the real miracle is much humbler than that. It's that anything exists at all. The simple fact of being of isness is already the greatest magic show in the cosmos. Before awakening, you were too busy chasing meaning to notice how magnificent the meaningless already was. After awakening, meaning no longer matters, because everything simply shines in its own right. The sound of rain doesn't mean anything, and yet it's perfect. The taste of tea carries no cosmic message, and yet it's complete. You start to see that enlightenment was never about reaching higher planes. It's about sinking deeper into the ordinary. To sit, breathe, smile, and know this is it. This, the eternal present, disguised as your morning routine. But make no mistake, this realization can be unsettling. You spent years building a spiritual fantasy, imagining the great transformation, the ecstatic visions, the transcendence of suffering. And now, instead, you've been handed a broom. It's like traveling all the way to India to find the guru, only to have him tell you, go sweep the courtyard. You see, the infinite doesn't look the way your ego wanted it to. It's not fireworks, it's stillness. It's not a drama, it's a quiet smile. It's not the thunderclap of heaven, it's the creak of the chair you're sitting on. And yet, within this so-called banality, there's a sweetness beyond description. When you no longer divide life into sacred and profane, every breath becomes a prayer, every movement a bow. You begin to laugh at your own seriousness, the cosmic giggle returns. It's as if you've spent your life searching for diamonds, only to realize the floor beneath you is already glittering with them. You just never look down. So enlightenment, it turns out, doesn't elevate you above life. It immerses you fully into it. You don't become a saint or a prophet. You become achingly, tenderly human, completely at home in the mess of existence. When the infinite reveals itself, it doesn't need trumpets or halos. It yawns, stretches, and says, good morning. And from that moment on, you find beauty in things you once ignored. The rhythm of washing dishes, the warmth of a cup in your hands, the absurdity of traffic jams, the way sunlight clings to dust in the air. You see, the divine never left. It was hiding in plain sight, waiting for you to notice that there was never anything ordinary to begin with. So the great revelation after awakening is not that you've entered heaven, it's that heaven was always here, wearing the face of the mundane. And perhaps the greatest wisdom is simply to smile at it all, to let existence be beautifully, exquisitely normal. After the great ordinariness settles in, something curious begins to fade, a familiar hum, a constant buzzing you never noticed until it was gone. It's the noise of trying, the endless background effort to become something, to be someone, to win at the game of life. And suddenly, without even meaning to, you stop playing. Not because you've lost, but because you finally see there was no scoreboard to begin with. You see, human life, beautiful, frantic, tragic, glorious, is, at its core, a kind of game, a divine hide-and-seek. We set up rules, we build stories, we chase points, we compare achievements, and we pretend it all matters terribly. But awakening is like walking backstage and finding the actors half out of costume, laughing between scenes. You see the props for what they are, cardboard, lights and paint, the crowns and failures, the applause and criticism, all part of the same theater. And for a moment, it's disorienting because you've spent years perfecting your performance. You studied your lines, learned when to smile, when to weep, when to fall in love and when to fall apart. And now the curtain has dropped and you're standing there wondering what to do with your hands. That's what I call the disappearance of the game. It's when the cosmic trick reveals itself and you realize you've been taking play too seriously. Of course, there's a strange sadness in this realization, a kind of quiet mourning, because the game gave life structure, ambition, drama. Without it, there's just freedom. And freedom, at first, can feel like falling. We humans have become so accustomed to struggle that peace feels unnatural, even frightening. The ego whispers, "But what will you do if you stop chasing?" And the answer is both hilarious and terrifying. Everything and nothing in particular. Life keeps moving, but it no longer has a goal. You eat when you're hungry. You sleep when you're tired. You love because it's delightful, not because it completes you. Actions arise like waves, effortless, spontaneous, without agenda. And this is where the ego truly panics, because it can't take credit anymore. There's no I left who's improving or performing or saving the world. There's just life, doing life, breathing itself in and out through 10,000 forms. Now, some people hear this and think it means passivity, some dreary resignation. Not at all. In fact, when the game disappears, you discover the purest play of all. You start living like music. You don't listen to a symphony in order to reach the end. That would be absurd. The joy of music is the unfolding, the rhythm, the dance of sound in time. Life, too, is meant to be played, not won, but we've been trained to treat it like a competition, a race, a resume. We turn love into a contract, art into a career, spirituality into a contest of who's most awakened, and then we wonder why it all feels hollow. When you awaken, that hollowness becomes transparent. You see right through it. The ambition that once drove you now feels like an old costume that no longer fits. You can still wear it, if you like, but it itches. You can go to work, earn your living, raise children, build things, dream things, but you do it with a twinkle in your eye, because you know it's all play. The seriousness drops away, and what's left is a kind of divine mischief, a lightness that touches everything. You see, the disappearance of the game isn't nihilism, it's the rediscovery of fun. When the stakes vanish, the freedom to enjoy returns. When the goal disappears, the journey becomes infinite. And from that freedom comes a new kind of participation in life, effortless, creative, compassionate. You no longer help others to feel superior, or love to fill a hole, or meditate to earn points with the cosmos. You do what you do because it's what the universe happens to be doing through you right now. This is what the old sages meant by wu-wei, actionless action, the flow of the Tao. The river doesn't strain to move. It moves because it is the moving. And so, when the game dissolves, life becomes like that, simple, fluid, alive. There's nothing to win, nothing to lose. There's only the play itself and the infinite laughter of the universe, realizing it was never in danger, never in debt, never in need of a prize. So when the game disappears, don't panic. Smile. You've finally remembered what every child knows before being taught otherwise, that all of this was meant to be enjoyed. Now, after the game disappears, after the striving and pretending and applause have faded into a strange, luminous quiet, something unexpected arises. It's not bliss, it's not ecstasy, it's loneliness. Not the old loneliness of wanting company or attention, no. This one is far more subtle. It's the loneliness of seeing too clearly. You begin to notice that most people are still deeply invested in the play. They're still arguing over rules, still auditioning for roles, still clutching their scripts as if their lives depended on it. And you, having seen behind the curtain, can no longer pretend you don't know it's theater. You sit among them at dinner tables, in offices, in cafes, and it's as though you've been let in on a secret the world isn't ready to share. It's like waking up in the middle of a dream, looking around, and realizing everyone else is still asleep, still dreaming of success, romance, tragedy, meaning. You try, perhaps, to rejoin them, to laugh at the old jokes, to fret about the same problems, but it's difficult, because something in you knows there's no real danger anymore. The monsters have no teeth, the storms are painted on. You want to shake them awake, to whisper, "It's all right, it's only a play." But then you remember, you can't, because if you pull them out too soon, you steal the very thing that gives their dream its beauty, the sincerity. And so you smile instead and let them sleep a little longer. This is the loneliness of the awakened, to walk among dreamers and love them without joining their dream, to play along sometimes, but gently, knowing that the costumes will come off eventually and everyone will laugh together backstage. It's not a superiority. You see, it's tenderness, compassion born from recognition, because you were once asleep too. You remember the thrill of the game, the desperation of belief, the comfort of certainty. And now, standing outside it all, you can't quite go back, but neither can you leave, because what would you leave? It's all the same ocean, all the same consciousness, pretending to be many. So you walk quietly, gently, through the world, neither saint nor skeptic, neither teacher nor student, just a participant who no longer believes in the stakes. And that absence of belief creates a curious distance. You might find that friendships change. Some drift away, not because you push them, but because your vibration no longer matches their music. They sense it that your silence unnerves them, your peace irritates their restlessness. You'll notice people reacting oddly to you, some drawn as if to a fire, others repelled as if by too much light. You will comfort and confuse in equal measure. But you learn not to mind, because you understand it's not you they're reacting to. It's the mirror. Still, this clarity can ache. You look around and see the world suffering, people chasing illusions, hurting each other for shadows, and part of you longs to forget again, just to feel the warmth of the crowd, the comfort of shared delusion. But you can't. The spell is broken. And yet, listen carefully, within that loneliness lies a deeper companionship, because as the false connections fade, you begin to sense another kind of intimacy, a quiet communion with everything. You find yourself talking to trees, listening to rivers, feeling the pulse of the stars. The loneliness turns inside out, and suddenly you realize you've never been alone at all. You are surrounded by yourself in every form, every face, every atom. The whole universe keeps you company, whispering through wind and laughter and birdsong. It's all right. We're here. We never left. So the loneliness of clarity isn't a punishment, it's a passage, the space between old belonging and new unity. You lose the crowd. Yes, but you gain the cosmos. And if sometimes you feel the ache of that distance, let it soften you. Let it remind you to love even more gently, to laugh a little more kindly, knowing how fragile the dream of separation is. Because one day, everyone will wake up, everyone will remember. And when they do, they'll look at you, and you'll both laugh, not out of mockery, but recognition. The dreamer and the awakened were never two. That's the secret hidden in the loneliness of clarity. It's the universe's way of making sure love never runs out of room to grow. When the loneliness settles into peace, another transformation occurs, subtle, but total. It is the end of striving, Not because you've grown tired or lazy, but because you finally see that motivation itself was part of the illusion. You see, for most of your life, everything you've done, every success, every failure, every prayer, every meditation has been powered by one simple fuel, the sense of lack. The feeling that somewhere, something was missing. You ran toward love because you felt unloved. You chased wealth because you feared scarcity. You sought God because you felt separate. And so the wheel turned. Endlessly desire, feeding effort. Effort, feeding desire. A beautiful machine built to go nowhere in particular. But when awakening blooms, the engine stalls. The illusion of lack vanishes. There is no hole to fill, no mountain to climb, no goal to reach. You are already it, already full, already home. And in that realization, the very machinery of striving begins to crumble. At first, it's disorienting. You might look around and think, well, what now? Because the old motivations, ambition, romance, recognition lose their grip. The carrot is gone, and so is the stick. The mind, used to pushing and pulling itself through life, finds no reason to move at all. This can be terrifying. You think, have I lost my purpose? No, you've lost your fiction, the story that there was ever a purpose apart from being alive. And so life begins to flow without effort. Not lazily, not passively, just naturally, like a river. You don't force yourself to create, or to love, or to serve. It happens the way breathing happens, spontaneously, without a you doing it. When the ego dissolves, doing and being become one movement. Action arises out of stillness, like music from silence. The Taoists call this wu wei, effortless action. The dance of the universe moving through you, without the burden of an agenda. You see, when there's no self trying to get anywhere, life simply unfolds in perfect rhythm. You speak when words are needed. You rest when silence is enough. You act without calculation and love without reason. This is the freedom beyond motivation. Freedom from the compulsion to improve, to prove, to justify your existence. You no longer act out of fear or hope. You act because it's delightful to act just as a tree grows or a bird sings. Someone might ask, but without goals, how will you achieve anything? And the answer is, more beautifully than ever. Because when you stop striving for perfection, perfection expresses itself through you. The painter paints not to be great, but because colors long to move. The lover loves not to be loved, but because love itself wants to dance. Life plays its music through you when you stop insisting on conducting the orchestra. Of course, from the outside, you'll still seem to do things. You'll write, work, travel, laugh. But the difference is invisible and immense. Before, you did these things to become. Now, you do them because you already are. And that difference changes everything. The anxiety that once pushed you, gone. The guilt that once haunted you, gone. You become transparent to the flow of existence, and in that transparency, everything gets done without anyone doing it. This is what I mean when I say, you don't live. Life lives you. You are not a puppet being controlled. You are the movement itself. There's no separation between the dancer and the dance, between the wind and its blowing. And when you taste this freedom, even the smallest acts, sipping tea, tying your shoes, sweeping the floor shimmer with meaning. Not the meaning of this leads to that, but the direct, immediate meaning of this is it. You no longer ask, why am I here? Because the question itself dissolves. You're here because here is all there ever was. And when there's no why, everything becomes infinitely playful. The Buddha once said, before enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood and carry water. But what he didn't say, what you now feel, is how different it tastes. The wood is warmer, the water sweeter? Because there's no longer anyone trying to make them holy. When you live without motivation, the world is no longer a ladder to climb, it's a garden to wander. You do not walk to arrive. You walk because walking itself is sacred. And in that walking, in that breath, in that quiet motion, you realize something astonishing. You have never been unfree. You only believed you were. And now, the belief has melted like snow under the sun. Nothing to fix, nothing to gain, nothing to lose. Only the infinite, dancing as this very moment, and the freedom of knowing that you were never apart from it. After the striving ends and the great current of life begins to move on its own, something beautifully unexpected takes place, a quiet return. Not a return to ignorance, not a fall from grace, but a homecoming to the simple, fragile, glorious business of being human. You see, there is a peculiar temptation after awakening to stay forever in the clouds, to speak only in whispers of the absolute, to wear the mask of the holy. Many fall into that trap, mistaking detachment for wisdom. But sooner or later, even the purest stillness begins to laugh, and you find yourself drawn back into the ordinary world, into the business of laughter and tears, of burnt toast and unpaid bills. This is what I call the gentle return to humanity, the discovery that enlightenment was never about escaping the human experience, but embracing it completely, without resistance, without shame, without expectation. You realize that the divine you sought was not hiding beyond the stars. It was peeking through the eyes of your neighbor, through the wrinkled hands of an old friend, through the sound of a baby's first cry. The infinite never asked you to transcend humanity. It asked you to taste it fully, to let divinity experience itself as hunger, fatigue, affection, confusion, laughter, grief. Before awakening, you lived as a human trying to be divine. After awakening, you live as the divine being, gloriously human. You find yourself laughing at small things again, the way your cat stares into space, the way sunlight lands perfectly on a dirty window. You cry, but without despair. You fail, but without self-condemnation. You love, not as a strategy, but as an inevitability, like a river running downhill. This return is gentle because it no longer carries the violence of should. You don't should yourself into compassion. You don't should yourself into meditation or morality. Goodness flows naturally because resistance has dissolved. You help because helping is beautiful. You forgive because forgiveness feels like breathing. Now, this doesn't mean you become a saint. Quite the contrary. You still get irritated, hungry, distracted, silly, but the difference is you don't make a problem of it. You no longer measure yourself against imaginary standards of perfection. You let the mud be part of the lotus. And in that acceptance, a deeper purity is born, not the purity of avoidance, but the purity of wholeness. Even the so-called flaws become endearing. You begin to see that the universe paints with every color, not just the bright ones. Your impatience, your quirks, your moments of foolishness, they're all brushstrokes in the great cosmic art. And as you rejoin the world, you find that the simplest things, sharing a meal, holding a hand, watching the evening light fade, carry the same sacredness as meditation once did. You no longer divide life into spiritual and worldly. You realize it was all one taste, all along. The human world, with its mistakes and miracles, becomes your temple. The child's laughter, your mantra. The sound of rain, your scripture. And your own heartbeat, that soft drum in the chest, becomes the rhythm of the eternal playing as you. This return to humanity is what allows the awakened one to truly love. Before, love was a transaction, a reaching outward for completion. Now, love is simply what remains when all reaching stops. It flows without purpose, like sunlight falling on all things, refusing nothing. You begin to walk gently in the world, not above it, not outside it, but within it, fully. Your enlightenment stops being a possession and becomes a fragrance. It lingers in your presence, in your laughter, in the way you listen. You don't teach it, you live it. And this, I think, is the real enlightenment, not thunderbolts or visions, but the ability to wash dishes with reverence, to listen without impatience, to meet another's eyes and see yourself there. It is not about transcending the human, it is about loving it so completely that nothing is left outside of the divine. For the final joke, of course, is this. You left home seeking God, and when you found him, he handed you an apron and said, "Now, go wash the rice." And you laugh because you understand. The sacred and the ordinary were never two. The absolute and the human were never separate. You were always what you were seeking, and you were always right here, peeling potatoes in the kitchen of eternity. After you've returned to the world, this wild carnival of laughter, heartbreak, and lost umbrellas, you may find a new impulse arising. It's a beautiful impulse, tender and sincere. I want to help others awaken. Ah, but here comes another of life's delightful ironies. The moment you think you're going to help others wake up, you've quietly fallen back asleep. You see, the desire to save people, to fix them, to bring them to your realization, carries within it a very subtle arrogance. It assumes there's someone who's awake and someone else who isn't. It divides the seamless ocean of being into rescuers and rescued, as if the wave on the left were somehow more oceanic than the one on the right. And yet, how could that be? The same water flows through them both. So here we are, back inside another cosmic joke, the enlightened trying to enlighten others, the universe trying to light a candle for itself. Now, don't misunderstand me. Compassion is natural. When you see someone suffer, your heart responds. It's not a duty. It's a spontaneous flowering of love. But true compassion doesn't come with a mission. It doesn't say, I must fix this. It says, how beautiful and mysterious this play is. Even the suffering, even the confusion. You can hold someone's hand, you can listen, you can share a story, but you can't give awakening. Not because you're unworthy, but because no one ever lacked it in the first place. That's the hardest truth for a teacher to learn. No one can be saved because no one was ever lost. And the awakened person who truly sees this begins to laugh, not mockingly, but with that deep, belly-shaking laughter that ripples out of eternity, because they remember, even the act of helping is just the universe playing with itself. The teacher and the student, the healer and the healed, they're the same infinite consciousness wearing different hats. So you learn to play the role of helper lightly, as a dance, rather than a duty. When someone asks for guidance, you speak not to instruct, but to remind them of what they already know. You talk the way the wind talks to trees, rustling their leaves, but never pushing. Sometimes people will come to you desperate for answers, and the best thing you can give them is a good laugh, because laughter is the shortest bridge between illusion and truth. And yet, there's tenderness too. You no longer look at the unawakened as inferior or ignorant. You see them as the universe, mid-costume change, still playing out the scenes you once adored. You know that even their suffering is sacred, because it's part of the process by which the divine rediscovers itself. So you let people be. You trust their timing, their rhythm, their music. You no longer impose your enlightenment on anyone, because you've realized there's no one here but you. And this brings an incredible ease to your interactions. You can share without convincing, speak without preaching, love without agenda. The awakened don't convert, they infect. Their presence carries a quiet fragrance, peace without effort, humor without cruelty, love without conditions. And those who are ready to awaken will sense it. They'll feel something stir, something remember, something smile inside them. You won't need to persuade. The truth is contagious enough on its own. You see, helping others is not about dragging them towards some distant light. It's about recognizing the light already shining in their confusion. It's about seeing the Buddha even in the beggar, the Christ even in the criminal, the self even in the shadow. To help in this way is not to interfere, but to celebrate. You celebrate the play of awakening wherever it happens, in a child's question, in a stranger's kindness, in your own clumsy mistakes. And when you do act, when your hands move to comfort, or your voice rises to teach, it's not you helping them. It's life loving itself through two different faces. It's the dance of the same energy meeting itself in different disguises. So, my friends, beware of taking the role of savior too seriously. God doesn't need missionaries. The infinite isn't broken. The universe has no missing parts, only temporarily disguised ones. The only true way to help is to remember that there is no one to help. There's only remembering, rippling outward in infinite forms, until even the idea of awakening dissolves into laughter. And when that laughter comes, you'll see there was never a teacher, never a student, never anyone lost or found, just the eternal playing with its own reflection. After all the laughter, after the grand comedy of trying to save what was never lost, you begin to notice something quietly astonishing. Awakening itself does not stop. It never did. There is no finish line, no graduation, no final stamp that says enlightened being complete. The notion of arrival was the first illusion, remember? And even now, after the seeker has died and the game has dissolved, the dance goes on infinitely, playfully, tenderly, because the universe never repeats itself. It doesn't rest on its laurels. It's always inventing new ways to surprise itself. And since you are not apart from it, you too are part of that unfolding surprise. Each breath reveals a new texture of existence, a new depth to the same silence. Even the simplest things, the curve of a cloud, the taste of a berry, the laughter of a stranger, carry a freshness you hadn't noticed before. It's as if life keeps turning itself inside out, showing new faces of the same mystery. You realize then that awakening is not an event, it's a rhythm. It opens and closes, expands and contracts like the lungs of God, moments of dazzling clarity followed by days of forgetfulness, nights of laughter followed by mornings of tears. And that, too, is awakening. You see, even the forgetfulness is part of the remembering. Even the confusion is part of the clarity. You can't have one without the other, because they define each other like sound and silence, wave and trough, yin and yang. And so the universe continues its eternal breathing in and out, awakening and dreaming, remembering and pretending to forget. The enlightened person is not someone who stays awake forever. They are one who has realized that sleeping and waking are both part of the same game. This is the endless unfolding, the great cosmic improvisation. You are not on a path that ends in perfection. You are the path itself, endlessly walking in circles that spiral outward forever. And as this sinks in, a profound peace arises. You stop measuring your life in terms of progress. You stop waiting for the next breakthrough, the next level of consciousness, the next mystical certificate, because you understand this moment is the breakthrough, and the next moment will be another. It's all one unending celebration of discovery. The mind, of course, tries to capture it. It wants to pin the butterfly of truth to a board and label it final understanding. But every time you think you've got it, it slips through your fingers, laughing, because truth is alive. It cannot be kept, it must be danced with. The old masters used to say, before enlightenment, mountains are mountains and rivers are rivers. During enlightenment, mountains are no longer mountains, and rivers are no longer rivers. After enlightenment, mountains are once again mountains and rivers are once again rivers. You see, that's not a riddle. It's a map of endless unfolding. Every time you think you've understood reality, it reshapes itself. Every time you think you've seen the end, you discover another beginning hiding inside. And what a relief that is. Because if enlightenment were truly final, the play would be over and eternity abhors boredom. Even God, I suspect, delights in not knowing what will happen next. So don't imagine awakening as a steady state of bliss or certainty. That's just another dream of control. The real awakening is endlessly alive. It trembles. It moves. It changes shape like light on water. There will still be moments of confusion, flashes of fear, waves of sorrow. But they no longer feel like intrusions. They feel like weather passing through the sky of consciousness, sometimes stormy, sometimes bright, always perfect in its timing. You stop asking, "When will I finally arrive?" and instead whisper with a smile, "Ah, here we go again. Ha." You learn to meet each unfolding, each joy, each heartbreak like an old friend arriving unannounced. You pour them tea, you listen to their stories, and when they leave, you don't cling, because you know they'll return in another form. This is the great ease of awakening, to be endlessly surprised and never disappointed, to trust that even when you forget, you'll remember again, and that both are part of the same eternal remembering. So, my friends, don't try to hold on to enlightenment. It is not a possession. It's a wave that carries you home over and over through countless lifetimes, countless forms, countless mornings, and each time you awaken to love, to loss, to laughter, to pain, the universe whispers the same secret through it all. This too is me, and the dance continues forever. And so, you see, the universe keeps on playing, hiding, revealing, hiding again. It's an eternal peekaboo between consciousness and itself. One moment you are vast beyond measure, radiant and free. The next, you're caught in traffic, irritated, muttering under your breath about the incompetence of the driver in front of you. And both are the same thing, the infinite pretending to be momentarily finite. God trying on humanity for the thrill of it. We like to imagine that awakening is permanent, as if you could nail the wind to the sky and call it mine. But the truth is more playful. Awakening and forgetting dance together endlessly. They are lovers, not enemies. Each gives meaning to the other. Without forgetting, awakening would have no sweetness. Without the night, dawn would not astonish us. You see, the forgetting is not failure, it is divine mischief. It's how life renews its own curiosity. For what joy would there be in remembering forever, with nothing left to rediscover? So the universe, in its infinite artistry, built in this rhythm, awakening and dreaming, remembering and losing sight, being and becoming. You breathe in and you forget. You breathe out and you remember. The ego reappears from time to time. Of course, it tiptoes back in through the side door, pretending to be helpful. Ah, yes, you're enlightened now. You'd better make sure everyone knows it. And when you catch yourself falling for the trick again, you laugh because you recognize the joke. That laughter is awakening. You see, every moment of self-consciousness, every pang of fear or pride, every stumble back into identification, is just another chance to wake up anew. The forgetting gives birth to remembering, and remembering gives meaning to the forgetting. It's a pulse like the beat of a cosmic heart. So don't scold yourself when you forget. Don't make a religion out of staying awake. Even the Buddha blinked. The truth is not meant to be held like a possession. It's meant to be rediscovered again and again with the same astonishment, the same delight as the first time. That's what keeps the whole thing alive. Imagine a child playing hide and seek with herself. She hides behind the couch, closes her eyes, and whispers, "You'll never find me." And then she peeks and giggles and runs to hide again. That's you. That's the universe. That's God, pretending to lose and find itself through you. This is why, when you truly awaken, you stop demanding permanence. You don't want to freeze the dance. You want to move with it. You realize that every forgetting is just the next note in the melody, and you start to appreciate how perfectly the music flows. When you forget, the world becomes intense, personal, vivid. You taste, you ache, you desire, and when you remember, the world becomes transparent, infinite, silent. Both are sacred. Both are necessary. The problem was never the forgetting. The problem was believing the forgetting was a mistake. You were never meant to stay at the mountaintop. You were meant to climb, descend, climb again, to carry that stillness down into the marketplace, into the noise, into the laughter and chaos of life. The Buddha, after all, didn't stay under the Bodhi tree forever. He stood up and walked into town. And that's the dance, waking and dreaming. Mountain and valley, silence and song. Each time you lose sight of the truth, it isn't a setback. It's the universe preparing another surprise. Each time you remember, it's like meeting an old friend for the first time. The wise ones don't try to escape this rhythm. They sway with it. When they forget wholeheartedly, diving into the illusion with gusto. When they remember completely laughing at the illusion's cleverness. And in that balance, they discover the beauty of being both divine and human. Because in the end, the dance of forgetting and remembering isn't something you master, it's something you are. You are the dancer and the dance, the music and the silence, the losing and the finding, the whole endless movement of existence discovering itself anew each moment. So when you forget who you are, don't despair. It's just life taking another breath in. And when you remember, don't cling to it. It's just life breathing out. And between those two breaths, if you listen carefully, you'll hear laughter, soft, eternal, familiar, the laughter of the one who never forgot at all. And so, after all the journeys, all the laughter, all the circles of remembering and forgetting, something subtle begins to dawn, not as a thought, not even as a feeling, but as a presence, silence. Not the absence of sound, but the silence beneath all sound. The silence that holds everything. The silence that was here before you were born and will remain long after your last breath fades into the air. It isn't a silence you can practice or reach or even describe, because you are it. It is what has been listening all along, through every joy, every sorrow, every word of this endless conversation. You see, all our talking about awakening, all the metaphors and parables and laughter have been like waves on the surface of that still ocean. Necessary waves, playful waves, but waves nonetheless. And now, perhaps, we are quiet enough to feel the water itself. This is the part that cannot be taught. It cannot be shared, because there is no one else to share it with. It is the still point at the center of the turning world, where subject and object, self and other, inside and outside, all collapse into a single, boundless awareness. And in that stillness, there's no need to understand anymore. There's no need to hold on to any philosophy, no need to choose between East and West, sacred and profane, heaven and earth. Because here, everything already belongs. You realize that silence was never the opposite of sound. It was the space that allowed sound to exist. In the same way, the self was never apart from the world. It was the space that allowed the world to appear. You have been this silence from the very beginning. You might say, but surely I'll forget this again. Of course you will. That's part of the dance. But even in forgetting, silence remains. Even when the mind fills with noise, the silence beneath it is unchanged. It doesn't struggle. It doesn't defend itself. It simply holds everything. like the sky holding clouds. When you taste this silence, not as an experience, but as your very nature, something extraordinary happens. You stop needing to fix the world. You stop needing to fix yourself. You simply allow things to be as they are, and in that allowing, everything begins to move in harmony. And it's funny, you realize that the silence was never empty. It hums with life. It is the laughter of stars, the rhythm of your own heartbeat, the soft murmur of wind in the trees. If you listen closely, you'll hear it even now. Not with your ears, but with that still awareness that is hearing itself. That's why the sages often end in silence. Not because they have run out of words, but because they've finally arrived where words can't follow. The finger has pointed long enough, now look at the moon. And what is that moon? It's you. It's everything. It's this right here, right now, before the next thought arises. So, my friends, let us end not with a conclusion, but with a pause, not with an answer, but with a breath. Because the truth, the real truth, was never hidden in the teaching, nor in the journey, nor in the enlightenment. It was hidden in the stillness that was listening the whole time. You have always been home. You have always been whole. You have always been the silence that says everything.